Man, my room is a mess. Okay, so the question on everyone's mind, Wi-Fi router or mini fridge? Okay, so we've had a little bit of time to really sink into the PS5 reveal, and the memes are in full force, the fanboys are dead set on reviving the console war, and the master PC race is as smug as ever. I'll be transparent right out of the gate and say that I'm probably going to go with the PS5 myself, but I'm going to try to level the playing field as much as I can. Before I get into all of that, I think it's important for me to point out that it's my personal belief that allegiance to a mass-produced consumer device that is catered to the lowest common denominator in order to maximize profits is dumb. Don't do that. And I don't mean that you can't have preference in games. I mean that your reason for making this type of purchase shouldn't be based on a logo. Maybe it comes from growing up in one of the poorest neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago, but for these types of purchases, you should always go with what's going to give you the most bang for your buck, the most value not only for your money but for your time. After all, these purchases are made for entertainment producing mediums, so it's really worth reevaluating all the offerings available, especially now that we're headed into a new console generation. Now, this is a little bit different from being invested in a niche brand or a company that shares your values or you buy into their mission statement. That's a little bit different, and I do kind of see where loyalty to that comes from when you're feeling a bit of a connection. But when it comes to the category of gaming consoles and really tech in general, understand what you are looking for, see what fits that need best, and go with that. I guess technically that could just be the video right there. Just go with the console that fits your needs and that's it. But that's boring and non-specific, and I hate non-specific content, so let me break this down a little bit further. Number one, community. I imagine that most of you are already talking about this with your friends or fellow gamers. Honestly, the social aspect of gaming can be one of the more crucial parts of your gaming experience. And I'm not just talking about multiplayer or online games. I'm talking about the communities within the communities, the conversations around single player experiences, or the many different approaches to a well-made open world game. Let's take Breath of the Wild, for example. That subreddit community is still very much alive, with players sharing trick shots, creative game mechanic combinations, different community challenges, and even reaching so far as things like tattoos and fan art. And while every rock has been unturned in terms of game content, there are still plenty of active viewers on YouTube and Twitch. Now, I know that this example is a Nintendo example, but the point stands. If you have others to talk about your game with, the more invested you then become into that game. Now, while units sold isn't exactly a perfect measurement of an active community, PlayStation saw 103 million active players in the month of December with the last release of data that they gave us, whereas Xbox had 63 million in that same time frame. Granted, this is across all platforms, so it includes the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but it's still something to keep in mind. You're more likely to run into someone with the PlayStation 4 than you are with an Xbox One. I mean, these are huge numbers anyways, so you're probably not going to have a problem, and it makes more sense to start getting into what game specifically you're looking for to make the decision. But based on the community aspect alone and the fact that you are more likely to run into a PlayStation gamer, the community round will go to PlayStation. Number two, price. Even though we don't have any pricing information on the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, price point is probably going to be the single most important deciding factor for gamers looking to make the jump to a next-gen console. There's a lot of really bad and conflicting rumors out there, so I'm not really going to get into any of that as far as pricing goes, but we can cover a couple of different scenarios. So let's say both of these are priced the same, and I'm talking about most comparable console. So I'm talking about the Xbox Series X, which, as far as I know, there isn't plans for a purely digital version like the PS5 does, and the physical media version of the PlayStation 5. Now, if this is true and both of them are priced identically, then the other factors then truly become more important. We're talking about exclusive games, the console that your friends are more likely to go with, but I imagine most people are just going to stick with what they know. So if you have an Xbox One X, you're probably going to go an Xbox Series X. If you have a PlayStation 4, you're probably going to go PlayStation 5. It's probably a little bit of an oversimplification and a little bit redundant, but you'll really need to keep an eye out on the other factors when you're making your decision. That means if both of those are priced the same, then the digital version of the PlayStation 5 will undoubtedly be cheaper, and gift givers are likely to go that route versus the Xbox Series X. Now, a different scenario. one is priced higher than the other. Doesn't matter which one, but let's just say that the base models are priced differently. So if you're on the fence or this is going to be a gift for someone, then you're more likely to go with the cheaper option. However, what I think is going to be more likely in this scenario is that the PlayStation 5 is actually the one that's priced a little bit higher. However, the digital version will bring that down a little bit, but that might actually cause a little bit of confusion with gift givers if they don't know that a digital version doesn't take physical copies of games. So that's something to think about as well. Not to mention that oftentimes price is overlooked when we're talking about the cost of an additional controller, any accessories, and games. You still need to buy games for your consoles, so that's an additional cost that you have to think about. If one is $100 cheaper than the other, then that's an extra $100 to buy a couple of those things as well. On that note, you also have to keep in mind that both have paid online premium subscriptions, but both of them now include similar perks in terms of game discounts, free monthly games, and so on. Ultimately, we don't know, so all of this is speculation, but don't underestimate the impact the price point will have on either of these consoles. No point goes to either console in this round. Number 3, ease of use. An often overlooked but still important factor is ease of use. And I'm not just talking about the console's interface. I'm talking about things like compatibility with your existing home setup. Will it fit in your TV stand? Do you have a 4K TV that supports 120 frames? Those are things that can actually add an additional cost if you're not ready for it. For any of you who are environmentally conscious, this could be a consideration as well. On that front, we don't have a ton of details yet either, but we do know that the PlayStation 5 sleep mode is supposed to be more efficient than the PlayStation 4's sleep mode. On the Xbox Series X side, we haven't really gotten any information, but to give you an idea, both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One X run at about similar power consumption in sleep mode. And included here is backwards compatibility. This is where Microsoft really makes some space for themselves and beats out PlayStation handily. We know for a fact that the Xbox Series X has much stronger backwards compatibility with Xbox One X, Xbox 360 games, which means that your existing game library is going to be much more easily transferable to your new console. The PlayStation 5, on the other hand, will only have backwards compatibility to the PlayStation 4. And while there are some select PlayStation 3 and older generation games available on the PlayStation Store, that's still something that isn't really comparable to what Microsoft is offering, so points gonna go here to the Xbox Series X. And 4, games. Finally, we have what should be the single most important aspect of your decision: the games. At the end of the day, this is what it's all about. And while personal preference does come to play here, there is a clear winner. Nintendo and PlayStation each had an exclusive title win Game of the Year in Breath of the Wild and God of War respectively. Microsoft did not have any exclusives win Game of the Year during this console generation. We're talking Game Awards here, probably the most biggest one, but just pointing that out. And as far as AAA titles, the Xbox really did fall behind this generation. PlayStation delivered on Spider-Man, God of War, Uncharted 4, Horizon Zero Dawn, Bloodborne, Infamous, Neo, Persona 5, and now The Last of Us Part 2. Just to name a few. On the flip side, Xbox relied heavily on the brand recognition of Halo and Gears of War, as well as delivering 2 fantastic Ori games, as well as the fun gameplay of Titanfall. But there really wasn't that much else. And with the move to make Xbox exclusives available on the PC, there really are no true exclusives on the Xbox anymore. That actually might be a pro in a lot of cases, and there is a discussion to be had about the pros and cons of exclusive game titles in the first place. But quite frankly, PlayStation is just doing a better job of delivering high quality exclusives and new IPs. Point's gonna go here to PlayStation. Now, you probably noticed that I didn't talk about hardware specs or performance. Obviously, we won't get to the meat and potatoes of what performance actually looks like until we get the consoles in our hands and we can compare some third-party titles across both platforms, but there's a reason not to focus on this part of it as much anyways. For starters, both consoles are set to deliver 4K gaming with the highest frame rates we've ever seen on any home console ever at 120 frames per second, but you'll need to have TVs or monitors that even support that type of performance in the first place. I'd wager that the vast majority of households only have TVs that can output 60 Hz at either 1080p or 4K, and ultimately, no one really notices those minor texture differences in real time. Even if we did, I don't really think it would make that much of a difference over the other points that we talked about in this video. Certainly not over the games. The smashing success of the Nintendo Switch is absolute proof of this concept. Now, there are other things going for the Switch that contribute to its success besides the Nintendo exclusives, but you can't dispute the fact that gamers are buying third-party titles that undisputedly perform better on a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One on the Switch anyways. Sure, you can make the argument that a Switch gamer is a little bit different from a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One X gamer, but it's not a big enough point to make an argument around when it comes to which next-gen console you should get. However, if one of these two consoles end up performing significantly worse than the other to the point that it's impacting gameplay, then I'm more willing to change my tune, but again, we won't really know that until we get the consoles in our hands. So, there you have it. The PlayStation 5 holds an advantage over the Xbox Series X as things stand today, but that's not to say that the Series X doesn't have a lot of things going for it. It does. There are still some compelling reasons for you to get an Xbox Series X, namely backwards compatibility. No matter which console you go with, I imagine that there's going to be a lot of fun to be had with both of these consoles, and they're going to be in short supply during the holiday season, so something to keep in mind. If you want to pull that trigger, make sure you do it early. Hopefully we get pricing and pre-order dates soon, but I imagine as we get closer to the fall, we'll start getting more information on that. Let me know what console you plan on getting. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time. That'll do, I guess.